Alright, so in this video I will be showing you how to properly trim your OEM shell and install the new IPS kit from FunnyPlaying. So this is the Laminated IPS kit. By far it's probably one of my favorite ones they released. I just love how the IPS screen is so close up to the lens, so it virtually eliminates, well, not virtually, but does eliminate the gap between the screen and the lens, so it kind of looks like you're using your smartphone. It looks really good, and this is probably going to be one of the more challenging trimming you will have to do out of all of the IPS kits. You know, it's a bit harder, but it's definitely doable if you get the right tools. So let me go ahead and show you what you're going to need to get the job done right. I'll put this to the side here. Okay, so you're going to need a craft knife, a small chisel or a scraper, of course your screwdriver set, and the most important one is you're going to need some kind of a Dremel or some kind of rotary tool, because this needs a lot of cutting inside. So it's going to be much easier if you use one of these versus, you know, tackling it with the craft knife, which is going to take you a long time, and these things are really sharp. You don't want to stab yourself with it, you know, messing around with it. So this will get the job done a lot faster, and it will make your life easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's start by taking the Game Boy apart, and I'm gonna fast forward through everything that requires, you know, taking the screws out and putting the screws back in, because that's not what you're here for, and I'm sure you know how to do that one. Okay, so now with that taken apart, I did forget to mention that this IPS kit, or trimming at least, really only works on solid color Game Boys like this. Now it's not gonna work for translucent or see-through shells like this. I'll show you why. This is my attempt on doing it in a clear shell. Now, because you have to cut in a bit onto the shell here, you can actually see all the scratches and the cut marks through the shell. So once the kit is in, it's kind of hard to see it on the camera, but you can see all those scratches and cuts inside. It just doesn't look good. So for translucent shells like this, you're probably gonna want to buy the pre-made shells that they have to offer. So this really is gonna look good on just solid colors like this. So just wanted to go ahead and note that, because I tried it and it does not look good. So stick to solid colors only. All right, so go ahead and take this board out of here, and we'll go ahead and get started on the trimming. Okay, so with the board out, let's go ahead and get the screen out. So what you want to do is just kind of twist the shell, and you're going to hear a little bit of cracking, or where the glue comes apart from the screen. This one's already loose, but you just twist it a little bit and the screen should come right out. And if you want to go ahead, you can save the LCD for future uses, but I already have plenty of them, so I usually just toss mine out. So all right, and then also gonna go ahead and pop out the lens. You can heat it up a little bit, it'll come up much easier, but you know, I have no use for these lenses, so just pop them right out. You don't want to put too much force, because you don't want to crack the plastic. So all right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to be outlining each part before I cut, so you know exactly what I'm cutting and where you need to cut. All right, so first thing we want to go ahead and cut out are these raised section here, all the way around. So this here, so all the way around. There we go. Okay, so it goes here, 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 and you want to cut down flush to the bottom shell here. So I'm going to be using the Dremel for this. So usually just take it, you go right in there, and you cut in right in until you cut through it. Now you want to be careful on this side and the left side here, because these are the screw posts. You don't want to go too deep and cut the screw post, then you're going to ruin your shell. So here I usually don't cut with the Dremel where the screw post. I'll cut to it, and then I would use the craft knife to just kind of work around the section here. So I would cut the top over here, and you do have the little hole here for the LED light, and that actually also needs to be, well, that actually will be cut about halfway, but so you don't have to worry about, you know, cutting with the Dremel, cutting into it. So you can go ahead and cut all the way through here, so the side and the bottom, and of course, you know, watch the screw post. So I'll go ahead and fast forward through that. Well, I'll go ahead and show you just a little bit, and then I'll fast forward through the rest. Alright, so it's a little messy right now, but as you can see, you just cut it straight flush to the shell. And of course, you're going to clean it up a bit more with the craft knife once you use the Dremel. So I'll go ahead and cut the rest. Alright, so once you cut it out with the Dremel, I'm going to go ahead and fix it up with the craft knife. So like I said, around these posts, you just cut it down here between the post and the that raised section here. So just cut right in between, that way it lets go. Now these OEM shells, they're pretty tough, so you want to be careful not to cut yourself with the knife. Take your time. So just cut all the way down. That's what happens when you push too hard. So let's go ahead and get another one. Only 95 more to go. Yeah, you break a lot of these, so I'm gonna go ahead and replace this. All right, with the blade replaced, let's try that again. Yeah, these are really brittle. They'll break really fast. I broke a bunch of them already. So like I said, let's go ahead and cut the posts in. So I did the bottom here, let's do the top one. Got the brand new blade, so it should cut a lot smoother. All right, that should be in. Okay, so then wherever you didn't reach with your Dremel, what you can do is just kind of, instead of cutting it, you can score it a few times like this. Just go right along the bottom here. Just score it a few times. Same here. And then it should break right off. So take some pliers, twist it back and forth, and there we go, that's out. So now just go ahead and clean, you know, all the loose plastic. Make sure everything's flush down to the bottom. You don't want any raised edges or raised areas that you didn't quite get down to the bottom. So just go over everything and cut everything down. All right, okay, so now the next step here, we're gonna need to cut. Let's flip it around. So I already marked this a little bit here, but so along the bottom you want to cut all the way down. So all this needs to go, but be careful when you cut with the Dremel. You know, you don't want to hit this area. So this all comes off, but don't hit this, because then you're going to be able to see that you scratched it. So just get as close as you can, but carefully, don't hit the outer shell. So this goes all the way to the bottom, and here we're basically going to need to go about halfway into the where the hole is for the LED light. So about halfway down the light and all the way down. And then on this side, on the right side, you need to go as close as possible to the screw posts here. So like this here. So that will be, so the screw posts are right there. So it'll be about like that. But it's easier if you just cut from this side. That way you know you get as close as possible to the screw post. So let's go ahead and cut that out. Well, actually, I forgot to mention the top. I already marked it, but you're gonna want to go almost to the top of the shell, not quite. So you want to leave a little gap, so it's gonna be very small, but just enough, as you can see here, the little gap right there for the screen. So this is where the IPS LCD, and that's the lens. So that just needs to go inside, and the lens will lay on top of the little section that you leave. So it's very small, but it needs to be there. You don't want to cut all the way to the top, because then your lens is just going to be going right through. You know, it's not going to have anything to holding on to. So all right, so with everything marked out, let's go ahead and start cutting. So again, I'm going to be using my Dremel for this one, and you can use a craft knife for this. You're just gonna want to go and score the plastic, you know, about 10 times on each side. Score it on all sides here, and then cut the corners in on all 4 sides. And once you score the plastic enough and cut the corners with the knife, you can take your pliers again and just wiggle it back and forth, and the plastic will break off. But that takes too long. You need to have patience for that, which I don't. So I got this instead. So let's go ahead and start cutting. All right, so all that's cut with the Dremel. So now it should just pop right out. And there we go. So that's a big piece you gotta cut out. All right, so now I'm gonna go take my craft knife again and just work around the edges and get all this debris cut down. So because when the Dremel cuts, it melts the plastic a little bit. So you just wanna kind of cut that off. Make sure all the edges are smooth and nothing is sticking out. So just go ahead and do that. You know, if you're using a knife, then of course you're not gonna have all these pieces sticking out, but either way. All right, as you can see here, I could have cut a little bit closer, but I just left a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy, because we're actually gonna go in the back here. And as you can see here, clean all this out of here. Let me get my marker. And see this raised section right along here? So this piece right here, that needs to be cut down as well. So basically all the way down where the cut is at, go here, and same thing on this side. So that needs to be filed down flush to the bottom of the shell here. And once that's filed down, we're also going to need to cut a little notch in this raised section here. As you can see along the side, it's a bit raised comparing to the middle here. So on the both sides here as well. So it's here and here. And that's when your little scraper here will come in handy. But let's first go ahead and file down this section here. Now I'm going to use my Dremel again. It's easiest to use the Dremel. You could use the craft knife for here, so just cut here and here, and then just kind of file it down little bit by little bit. But it's gonna, again, take too long. What you can do is kind of work along the bottom here, cut here, and then work your way down until it's flush with the center here. But I'm gonna go ahead and use my Dremel for this again. And if you're using a Dremel, what you do, I have this kind of like a sander bit here. Now put it right sideways like this, and it will just file it straight down. And again, you don't want to go too deep, as you're gonna take off or can even possibly cut through the plastic, and then it's gonna show in the face there. So, and also don't lean it too much inside here. Kind of keep it as straight as possible, because again, if you go on an angle too much, then you're gonna cut in like this in here. So just keep an eye on it, and have fun. Alright, so with that file down, just again work with your knife and get all the debris out. Make sure it's nice and flush. So now, as you can see, this area is nice and flush all the way to the edge, and nice and clean here. Okay, so now this is probably going to be the most important step here, because this section here, it's slightly raised. I don't know if you can tell in the camera here, but you can see that this section is flat, and then this corners here kind of go up a little bit. There's like a little ramp here. Now, because when the screen goes in here, this sections actually go all the way over there, and the IPS LCD lays flush against the shell here on the bottom. And if you don't cut this little raised section here, what actually happens is it will lift the corners of the screen, and it will damage it. I actually did that once before I figured out that needs to be filed down. So don't do that, or that way you're gonna ruin the screen here. So let's put it to the side. And what I do is take my knife, and what you want to do, I guess, you can kind of measure it where the screen is gonna be. I don't know if it's gonna go in yet. I still need to kind of figure out the corners here, but either way, it's about halfway down. So from the top here to the where the button's at, it's gonna be about halfway in. So you can do a little bit more, you know, it's not gonna hurt. That way you're gonna have extra room. So what I do is just kind of score the plastic, run it a few times this way, and then run it up, score the plastic, kind of make a guide. So you want to go wherever this cut is, go all the way down. So do that. Don't go too deep, you don't want to cut all the way through, but just kind of halfway. All right, so when you do that, let's do this side as well. Do it the bottom, and then we'll do the side. Sorry for the shaking camera. I should get a better mount, but you gotta start somewhere. All right, so do that, and then you're gonna take your little scraper here, and what you do is wherever you cut, then you just kind of take it and scrape off that little ramp area. I found this works the best for me. That way to the bottom here, it's gonna be nice and straight all the way to the cut here. So you're basically kind of scraping off the little ramp or the raised area. So let's do it. Do it a few times. You want to make sure it's nice and flush and straight all the way across. You could probably use the craft knife and just kind of scrape it away like this, but that's going to take a long time. So what I do is just use this scraper here, and you just kind of wiggle it back and forth while pushing down, and it takes a nice big portion off. And this is pretty sharp. I actually use a Dremel to kind of sharpen it up, and it works good. Okay, so you got this side, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing on this side, so I'll fast forward through it. All right, so once you got both of those corners filed down, so it's nice and flush all the way from corner to corner, so you don't see any bumps or raised sections here. Okay, so now we can actually go ahead and test fit the screen a little bit. Now it's probably not gonna fit in the corners here, and because that's when you get your craft knife and touch it up again, but that way you just kind of know where we need to touch up a little bit more. So let's go ahead and grab our screen, and with this one you actually do it from the top. So what you do is you're gonna watch this the ribbon cable here. Don't put too much pressure on it or force, because they're really brittle. I broke a few already, and it's really not replaceable or repairable, I should say. So first go ahead and put the ribbon cable in, and then put the screen in so that it slides in, and then the screen just lays in. Now don't put too much pressure on the screen. Just don't push it, force it in if it's not going in. So put it in gently, it will stop wherever it needs to. Let's go ahead on this side, and as you can see how the screen lays in there, it's nice and flush all the way across. So that's why it's really important to cut those little notches out. Okay, so as you can see here, the screen is not going all the way in, so we need to go ahead and touch up this corner here and this corner here. And that's normal, you know, you're not gonna make it perfect the first time, so just put it in there, and like I said, don't push the screen all the way in. If it's stopped, turn it over, and you look where it needs to be trimmed down a little bit more. So let's go ahead, and I'm gonna trim that down a bit more. All right, so the corner's trimmed. Let's go ahead and try that once again. So again, like I said, watch the ribbon cable, put that in, slide it in, and let it go down. All right, let's check where we at here. So we need a little bit more on the corners. Well, this one looks fine, just a bit. So now it's the right corner. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim that once again. All right, so let's go ahead and try the last time. Bam, goes right in. And as you can see, the LCD lays flat in there, and the lens looks perfect. Nice and flush all the way around, and nice and flush in here. Okay, so the trimming is all done. Congratulations. Now this is the part when you can go ahead and just give your shell a nice clean inside and out, wash it, and I'm gonna go ahead and do that to mine. So I'll be back once it's nice and clean. All right, while the shells are drying, we can go ahead and prepare the actual board here. So we got the ribbon cable, the lens here, and the board. So let's go ahead and take the ribbon cable out. And this is pretty straightforward, as all the IPS kits. Same technique, same instructions. Put the ribbon cable in, and you're gonna solder on a few wires that come with it. All right, now normally the start and select cables are connected here. So the select will be the P12 and start will be P13. So you can solder onto here, but I actually like to use two vias up here. That way the wires are not running across the full board. Sometimes they get stuck under the pads here, you know, and it's just a bit harder to work with. So it's actually these two vias right here. Now I actually already introduced a bit of solder to them, and as well as the ribbon cable, but the bottom via is going to be your select and the top via is going to be your start. And you can beep them out just to make sure. So let's go ahead, go to continuity mode. So you go to P12 select, bottom via, we're good, and P13 is the top via here, we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and solder on the wires to the vias, but you know, you can either use these connections here or the vias. I just like to do it here. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and solder on the wires. So bottom via select, and the top one is gonna be your start. Go ahead and grab the top one and go to the start pad on the ribbon cable, and the bottom via cable to the select. Perfect. Okay, now once that's soldered on, and if you want to make sure if you're going to be using these vias, you can go ahead and beep them out, make sure it's properly connected. So let's go ahead to P12 on the select, and I'm going to go to select on the ribbon cable, and we got good continuity. Just can't get a good grip here, but it's beeping. And then start P13, and it's good. All right, so now let's go ahead and do the power and the touch sensor here. So let's go ahead and add some flux to both those pads. And for the power cable, so we're gonna go from power here and to where the power connector is at, and that's gonna be the third leg of the connector here. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, so third from the top. So it's gonna be labeled C next to it. So we're gonna connect it to that. So, and they do provide you with this little black cable here. So we're gonna go ahead and add some flux over there. And I'm gonna dab a little bit of solder on there. And on the power pad. And since I'm here, might as well do the touch. All right. So let's go ahead and connect it here. And I'm gonna grab my tweezers. And we'll do the leg here. All right. So that's good. And actually the touch sensor, I'll probably do it later. Let's see here. Well, might as well do it since I'm here. Actually, I don't know if I'm gonna use this touch sensor. I don't know. Let's see here. I usually don't like using these because they don't have that much. All right, so now let's go ahead and do the touch sensor. So put that right in there. All right, so that's in. Now we're ready to go ahead and start assembling everything. And this is a good time to go ahead and clean all the pads here, clean off all the flux off. Make sure your board is nice and clean the speaker as well. And we'll go ahead and put everything back together. All right, so we're pretty much all done. Let's assemble everything and we'll be done. So let's go ahead and start with the screen. Now I already removed the adhesive backing here and apply the sheet. This protects it from any short circuiting that can happen once the ribbon cable is connected to the screen, because it's laying right on top of it. And it does come in the kit in a sheet like this. So let's go ahead and put the screen in this way. Now I do like to add a little bit of hot glue once the screen is in on the sides here on the top, because there's just only a little bit of adhesive that's holding it on the sides here. So add a little bit of hot glue just to keep it secure. But for this one, I'm just gonna do it a bit later. So let's go ahead and connect the ribbon cable. And you want to be careful with this one. You don't want to apply too much pressure on the screen. So just line it up, and you're gonna hear a little click once it's in place. So once it clicks, you're good to go. All right, so now let's go ahead and put the buttons in. Okay, so that's in place. Now I do like to add a little bit of piece of foam on the ribbon cable here once you're gonna fold the board in. That way just kind of keeps the ribbon cable in place and make sure it's not gonna be touching the board whenever it's inside. All right, let's put our speaker in place and tuck the cables underneath there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and screw on the board to the shell. So we got our 3 screws here. All right, so now all we have left is the power button, power slider, and then we have the RF little window here. All right, and the touch sensor, just go right behind it. It goes right in there. Okay, so now we're pretty much all done. Okay, so let's go ahead and put on the top cover. Now before I'll secure the cover back on with screws, I just want to test everything, make sure everything's working properly. So go ahead and grab some batteries and power it on. Perfect. So our touch sensor works. Let's go turn up the brightness. Okay, now to use the menu, press start and select together. So once you're in game, this will move the screen up if you use start and down if you press select. Okay, so that's good. And then you're gonna tap the sensor one more time. This will go to boy, and if you start, this will move the screen to the right, and select will move it over to the left. So once you're at where you want it, press select and start once again, and then you can tap on the sensor and we'll go over to color, and this will change the color of the background. So once you choose the color you want, press start and select again, and this will exit out of it. So that's it, you're all done.